Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Project Management Paradise podcast, your passport to project success. I'm your host, Aaron Murphy, and today I'm joined by Nils Herzberg to discuss the topic of digital transformation in the aerospace and defense industry. For anyone who knows Nils, he is a seasoned international business leader with over 35 years' experience with SAP. Recently, he focuses on helping enterprise embrace new technologies, making digital supply chain, Internet of Things, and Industry 4.0 a reality. Niels, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast. Really excited for this. For anyone who might not know you, could you tell us about yourself and your background and how you ended up becoming an expert in digitization and change management?
Wow, that is a long story. Yeah, I can do that. So, as you already mentioned, I worked for SAP for 25 years. Prior to that, I worked in strategic consultant, Capgemini, and also Boston Consulting Group. But the most important thing is really, I did study aeronautical engineering in the beginning. I did aerodynamics in Germany and in the UK, and then worked in the helicopter industry, designing helicopter rotor systems. So I'm one of these people who can also explain to you why helicopters actually do fly, which is very simple. They are so ugly that the Earth rejects them. So that is the simple explanation of that one. Yeah, so with 25 years of SAP working with customers, I joined in the aerospace industry. And that is where you just by observing a lot of the customers, what they were doing, and the challenge that they were facing, which made me very much a student, a learner, but also an expert after a while in terms of what this whole digital transformation was all about.
That's amazing. And I suppose over your many years, you've probably been asked this question many times, but how would you define digital transformation?
Uh, I think the first thing, Aaron, is that I would describe it as a marathon, not as a sprint. It is not a one-time thing. It's something that stays with you. I would describe it as something that comes in phases. So I think the first phase of digital transformation is going from paper to something that is digital. Then there is a topic of you embracing what technology can bring you, which was first just transaction processing. Then I worked in IoT for a very long time, as you've mentioned, which gives a whole lot of insight into what is really going on, and you're taking away the guesswork. Now, last week I was at actually not last week, this week, I was at the Hannover Messe, which is one of the prime trade shows here in Germany. And there, everything was about AI and how you can apply AI to make things even easier. And just this morning, I had a breakfast with a good friend, and he was telling me, well, how he converted some old code into new code using AI technology within an hour. So, long story short, it is a journey. I think it is a journey that helps enterprises to keep up, let me say, with the speed of business. That is a very, very important point. And you to take away the boring, the menial, the automation task. But I think your next question may actually be, can I go from analog to completely, leading in digital transformation? No, that is, I think, one part of the challenge, Aaron, that we are all facing is, we faced that in school. I mean, you didn't graduate grade one, and high school in 1 year and you were done. No, we had to go through the 12 years or whatever it is in Ireland. I did my 12 years here in Germany and South Africa. Um, so you can't go from paper-based to AI in one step, and that is why it is a journey. But every step of the way is transformative for you as a business.
Absolutely. And it's playing the long game rather than the short game. And
Absolutely.
I'd imagine over the years, you probably have encountered people who were maybe resistant to the change going from, as you said, like an analog process to a digital one.
Yes, but I don't know them anymore because they vanished from the scene. Because You're very, very early in my career, even before I was at SAP, I was advising a very, very major manufacturer of railroad of locomotives about this whole topic. Their question was, why does it actually take so long from the order of a locomotive to the locomotive actually being on the rails and working? And we went down a path of analyzing why it took so long, and it was really about waiting. And we pitched something that at the time we called time-based competition, which was really about um, those who have the best answer now rather than somewhere in the future, who have the best quality now, are the ones that are going to win. And that was a pretty visionary view at that place in time. Nowadays, I think you probably are a customer of Amazon, so am I. But if we don't find it on Amazon, we find it somewhere else. And whom do we buy from? Is the person who has the best information and is available to ship now. And that is why you have to do digital transformation, because the speed of business is forever increasing. Just to make it very, very clear, you hear it in my accent, maybe. I grew up in South Africa, and my parents emigrated when I was very small, in the 70s. And my dad had his BMW with him. He actually took it with him from Germany. And then he wanted to have parts. And he actually would go onto the typewriter and type up the order with carbon copy and put it into the mail. And it was sea freight of mail from South Africa to Europe at that time. So the answer came back in 3 to 4 months later about the spare part being available or not. Now, just to give you now, 40 years later, 50 years later, we do that within 2 seconds. That is how the speed of business has increased and why analog is just not there anymore. Make sense?
Absolutely. And I'd say if we had to wait that long of a duration to get a response for something, we'd probably all go a bit crazy, to be honest, because everything is
Well,
at our fingertips now.
yes. Well, if you're still on analog, and everybody else is digital and able to answer quickly, that's, I think, part of the point.
Absolutely. And I suppose when you're implementing a digital transformation program into an organization, I'd imagine that a CEO would often ask you the question, why bother doing this? And that was a great example. It's going from the analog process to digital for a
Yes.
quick decision, quick, fast, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is one really also this thought about time-based competition to keep up with your competition or to be better than your competition in providing the right quality, the right response, and so on. But if you really step back at the moment, I think there are further reasons of why you would want to be on the digital transformation. You're being here in Europe. I think we are facing quite a few challenges, but some of those challenges are being thrown at us from a compliance perspective, from a sustainability perspective, from a Green Deal perspective, from a product documentation perspective. Um, and I think if you would actually add up all of those requirements, the EU Data Act as well, then you just cannot do that by hand. You can't afford that amount of data collection, data report generating on a regular basis. You actually will not survive as an enterprise in Europe if you're unable to provide that information accurately, without mistakes, and very timely, because otherwise you're going to be fined for not providing the information. Same holds true in the US, just a different set of regulations. If you're in aerospace in the US, where I started, the billing to the government was also always a gift that it keeps on giving you challenges, because it was not easy, it was difficult, and the less mistakes you made, the better.
And essentially, time is money in that regard. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm Just curious, when setting out a digital transformation program, what would be the main pitfalls to be wary of?
I think your pitfalls, you don't do it for the sake of doing it. You focus on pain that needs to go away. You so have a reason, have a business case to do it. Don't do it for the sake. Don't make it a pet project, or don't view it as a technology thing. You're very, very important at the moment. Everybody talks about AI, but don't do it as an AI project, but do it as a project to solve a business problems powered by AI. And that I think would be the one thing that I would encourage as a pitfall. Others I have to think about. I'll come back to you on that one, maybe during the course of this
Yeah,
discussion. Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. And just even touching on AI, using it within the digital transformation realm, would it be a great way of implementing it at the start to get like the groundwork on just setting up a program? Or what would be the best way to kind of implement AI in a digital transformation program?
I think obviously AI can help you to understand where you are by analyzing your situation. I think a lot of databases can be analyzed for what's inside and making a first order or second order sense of it. Also, if you're doing your process steps, it can help you to understand what they really are versus what you think they are, and give you a lot of insight of where that is going on. So I think on the one hand, it can help you in certain areas with the setup of your program. I think though that AI needs information. The eye is important there, and it needs some place to learn something to analyze. So I think an important point of a strategy here would be to know where your data sits, and not put it all over the show. That I think I think the industry has been saying that for quite a while. Make sure you know where your data is, and you store it in as few places as necessary, not in as many places as possible. And I think that advice is now going to provide even more benefit, simply because that's where also you would start with all of your AI work, in the central repositories and not all over the show.
Absolutely, one centralized system to have all the information stored. And I suppose that
Yes.
would be a great way for starting the planning stage of a digital transformation program. And
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
said,
I would slightly differ from you. As few as necessary. One may be a good answer depending on, but sometimes I've also had customers where two or three would have been the is a good answer as well, recognizing that they are coming from 100. So I think almost part of a digital transformation nowadays would be the consolidation of all of these systems. But you shouldn't go as crazy as go to the extreme and say one. Do I know customers who arrived at one? Yes, I do. But I think that was very, very, very hard work. And that can be the long-term goal, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. It may also be that technology does require you to go down to one in the future, but it may seem one even though it isn't one.
that's very interesting. And would you have any good tips on how to start the planning and execution of a digital transformation program?
Yes, I think my first piece of advice would be, start focusing on the needs of your customer, because those needs of your customer are basically non-negotiable, and they are, everybody is in business because they are serving a customer. So start thinking from outside in by thinking of how you can serve your customer better, differently, or differentiatingly. I think I would also, I mean, as I said a bit earlier, start with your pain points. where you are feeling genuine pain and not perceived pain. Don't make it a technology demonstrator. I would argue make the business part of the whole journey, or even own the journey, and give it some oversight. Don't make it IT projects for the sake of IT projects. That also doesn't really help a lot. So those would be, some of the ways to start. I'm always a great fan of crawl, walk, run. That you try it somewhere, maybe with also with demonstrators to show that it works. You have to obviously take your users with you on the journey. That is an important part of it. So start talking to your those who are supposed to use the systems earlier rather than later when it is already everything has been implemented. The other part I would say is don't let it be a 7-year project. You think about chunking it and make sure that you are showing results on a very regular basis. And results is something, in my definition, a result is something that makes a difference in somebody else's life, and it's something that they can use. So a PowerPoint presentation stating that you're half finished with your project is not a result. That's just an update.
That's interesting. And from your experience over the years, how is digital transformation in the aerospace and defense industry different to, suppose, biopharma, engineering, and maybe financial services?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, they are very, very different. Let me say, the stairways to heaven are very, very different by industry, and in some industries they are more difficult than in others. Now, if we come particularly to the aerospace industry, we have to recognize that the aerospace industry, at the end of the day, produces things, aircraft and ships, and at least in the SAP definition, ships were part of aerospace as well. So that if they fall out of the sky, a lot of human tragedy happens. And also, if you look at the analysis, if they would fail the way they failed in the 60s, we would probably have a 777 falling out of the sky every day. So a lot of improvement has come to the industry over time. That is also partly due to the rigor of the backbones, the IT backbones, and the ability to analyze failures and making sure that they don't happen, compliance. So I would argue that in aerospace, there are more regulations, government regulations, that the operators have to adhere to, just because of the aircraft are not plastic toys that my sons play with. And that, I think, is one of the huge difference, how regulated you are versus how free you are to do whatever you think is right. And their aerospace is probably more on the very regulated stuff. Pharmaceuticals is there as well. The banking people are there in a different way because they are regulated so that you don't abuse the data that you've been given. In manufacturing, it is that the stuff that you manufacture is compliant and safe. So that are some of the differences. I think also some of the differences in the roadmap, Aaron, are depend on the size of the company. If you are one sales organization, one factory, one sales office, and you are 40, 50, 200 people, it is easier than if you are a company of 100,000 spread all over the world to actually make sure that everything keeps going right. So that is, I think, another part of it.
That's very interesting. And having more dispersed sites globally obviously comes with more
Absolutely.
problems.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I suppose with the more projects you would have within a digital transformation program, there's a need probably for a PPM system. So where do you see PPM and an ERP system intersect?
That's a very, very good question. I see whole industries that are, I would call them the program and project-based industries, that are depending on a very good execution of projects to even make their money or even make their profits. So aerospace is one of them. The building industry is another one. Part of industrial machinery and components is another one. All big infrastructure projects are another. Research and development in pharmaceuticals is another. Maintenance of oil and gas plants is another. So I would think that I don't know the number, Aaron, but I do think that probably somewhere north of 10%, I would guess 10 to 20% of the world's productivity GDPs all across the world are being executed in projects and programs, and hence there's a desperate need for a very good IT support in that. Now, the where's this? So you need the PPM to actually structure your portfolios, your programs, your projects. ERP, if you really think about it, every letter counts. E, enterprise; R, resource; and planning, the P. It really, ERP takes the program schedule and puts it into instructions. Buy this, do that, transport this, ship this, maintain that, hire this person, put this person onto that project. All of those are instructions that are being given by an ERP system based on the requirements planning. The resources are humans, it's machines, it's material. And how do you orchestrate that? And that I would actually see in an ERP layer. And the layer below that, obviously, that is not called the way I'm going to call it now, is actually the enterprise resource execution layer. The execution systems, your MES being one of them, if you are working in a factory, but there's execution systems in a harbor everywhere. That is the layer below that. So long story short, I think there needs to be a good project and program management in place and transparency to what do we have to do, are we doing it, and how we are progressing. But below that, I see a layer which I would call the planning and execution layer that gives instructions to humans, but even more into the future. And that's where my IoT angle comes in. The instructions will go to machines to start doing things. And that is part of the future as well.
So it's nearly like a constant information loop between all those layers.
Yes, absolutely. It is really, if you come to think of it, it's PPM giving instructions of, this needs to happen by then, which is a do. Given instruction to ERP. ERP breaks that down into lots of even smaller instructions: transport this, buy that, ship this, assemble that, or research this. And then from that layer, a confirmation, I did that, comes back. And that goes up and that improves and gives the feedback. And then ultimately, depending on what method you have, that goes into your earned value analysis, which is again part of PPM, at least in
Amazing.
my mind.
And I suppose having all those layers interlinked, you'd want to have your real-time data constantly available for each of these systems to pull from.
Yeah, Aaron, let's come back to one of the points we spoke about earlier, the speed of business.
Mm.
Yes, we are in aerospace. And if you think of a pilot of an aeroplane sitting in the cockpit and looking at his instruments, those things show where he is now, not where he was last week or last month. And I think that in portfolio and program management, those individuals deserve the same level of information. And this is coming back to our whole question of digital transformation. That is what we are trying to do. We're trying to give the pilots of the programs. Some of them are billions of euros or dollar, whatever currency you care about. how do you give them best line of sight so that they can actually manage this one through? And you and that is going to be also the next level of innovation is how do you give them more up-to-date information that they know where they are today and not where they are last week or last month.
That's very, very interesting. So it's having all that information there in front of them so that they're making.
There and now and
Yeah,
correct.
amazing. That's really, really interesting. And I suppose kind of the last question that I have for you today is over the course of your career, what
Mhm.
was the most important piece of advice you received and how has it helped you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, one that always sticks into my mind and which brings everybody to a laugh when I tell the story is yeah, once got feedback in my younger days as at SAP. We had this annual feedback cycle. What are you doing greatly and not so greatly, and so on. And my manager at the time said to me, as one piece of advice, he said to me, um, when you are excited, don't forget to tell your face. Yeah, you're smiling at this one because it is really true. And as we are interacting, it is really also not only about the spoken word, it is about that you actually show passion
Mm,
for what you're doing. And that was a very, just because it was with this one sentence, was a very, very good piece of advice that I've embraced a lot for myself. And wherever I go and I tell the story, I think a lot of people actually remember this sentence and they remind themselves as well. Well, how excited did I look when I was presenting this exciting new concept to the customers? Your body language is important. That was one of the best pieces of advice that I got from one of my leaders.
I really like that. It's reinforcing the message that you're delivering.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. And now we have to obviously think how are we going to do this when we're all on Zoom and Teams, because it is only up to here that you see me. You can't see the whole body language. You can
Yeah.
only see the upper. So we have to work on our skills of how we present things.
Absolutely. And you see a lot of people talking with their hands now on the Zoom calls and on Teams to kind
Yes.
of convey the point as well. And the facial expressions really does
Yes.
reinforce it.
Yeah.
Niels, thank you so much for taking the time for being on the podcast today. Really enjoyed our conversation. I really liked how you said that helicopters have been propelled from the earth as to why they fly. Uh, but if anyone wanted to get in contact with you and have a further discussion on any of the topics that we covered today, where would be the best place to reach you?
They should find me on LinkedIn. They can find a lot of my story on LinkedIn as well, and they can contact me over LinkedIn. That is probably the best place to be.
Fantastic. I'll make sure we include a link to your profile in our show notes. And once again,
Okay.
Niels, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Thanks for the time.